Good morning, everybody. I'm excited to be here for this session, for this really exciting program as well from the Startups in the Energy Transition Week organized by Dana. My name is Anika Nicolaas-Ponder from IKEM, the Institute for Climate Protection, Energy and Mobility. I'll be your moderator for this session. Just a couple of words about IKEM. We're a think tank that aims to accelerate and achieve the global energy transition, and I lead the sustainability and innovation team there. We work on new solutions to move the energy transition ahead, faster, further, deeper. My team works on things like offshore wind, transitioning coal regions, and of course, societal engagement, something that we sorely need if we want to reach our climate targets on time. And as countries around the world are now committing to curb their emissions, it's becoming tragically clear that these governmental efforts are not really quite enough to keep us below 2 degrees, let alone 1.5 degrees. We need disruptive action and innovation. And if that's not coming from governments, then where do we look for this change? And I strongly believe that we should look to people, to businesses, to innovators and startups to see the change that we need to see to reach our climate targets. And therefore, it's really my pleasure to introduce one of these innovators to you, our speaker for this session, Lubomilla Jordanova. She is the founder of the Berlin-based tech startup Plan.A Earth. Hi, Lubomilla.
Hi, Anika. It's such a pleasure to be here and to be able to chat with you about what's ahead of us and how can we solve it.
Yes, I'm also super excited to hear what you're doing. Plan.A Earth, such an innovative concept. For those of us who don't know it yet, maybe you can tell us a little bit about Plan.A Earth. What's your mission?
Of course, yeah. So in Plan.A, we use science to essentially enable companies to not only monitor and understand their emissions, but also reduce them. We have a software that automates the data collection behind any kind of topic that would be translated into emissions to then basically, based on the worst performing indicators, give them a sustainability action plan, a reduction plan, so that they know how to act on it. All of this lives on one single platform that is fully automated, and it's a standalone product for anyone to use.
Oh, that's great. That's really exciting. So just like as a background question, for those of us who also want to get engaged, you got a master's degree from the London School of Economics, and then you got into the climate change topic. Kind of like what drove you to start this exciting new company?
I actually didn't jump straight after LSE into the climate topic. I had to dive into a few other things like investment banking and also venture capital company builder in Asia. What really triggered me shortly after LSE, basically 2-3 years, 4 actually, to decide to build my own company was the true conviction that there's no better use of my own skills and time than actually fighting climate change. I had the unfortunate, or fortunate from another perspective, because it gave me the opportunity to find my life mission, event where I went surfing in Morocco, and instead of surfing, I ended up cleaning beaches for a week. This was essentially this serendipitous moment when I felt so disengaged and quite, I would say, sad that I had no idea about the topic of climate change. I was definitely aware that there was plastic pollution, there was problems with like overpackaging and all like overselling and so on. But the severity of the issue was not so familiar to me. I spent essentially 1 year, close to 1 year after that, just educating myself about the issues and really kind of diving deep into my own understanding of what actually climate change is and how I can dedicate my time to that.
That's a wonderful story also, that this is a topic that can draw people in, even when you don't necessarily have a background in it. It's the same for me. I studied economics and now I'm all about the climate. And like you said, something meaningful, something that matters, that makes the world maybe even a better place, is of course something that's very attractive in this business. Could you tell us a little bit more about the companies that you're working with? Is it any kind of company that signs up for this? And do they approach you, or do you kind of poke them and go, hey, you could do better?
It's always a give and take, so I think it's both ways. We work now with a few hundred companies from all over the world. Our definite focus is Europe because we have quite a strong presence in France and in Germany and in the UK. The companies we work with vary quite a lot in size and also in topic. So we have quite a lot of tech companies, we have financial institutions, we have also now some discussions that cannot be yet announced with automotive companies, and we work with BMW Foundation, we work with BCG, Digital Ventures, we work with football clubs, and also with quite a lot of SMEs across Europe. And since recently, we also started working with a few fashion companies as well. So there's a really big, I would say, wide palette of different actors. What really matters for someone to engage with us is that they really understand the importance of the issue, and they don't just want to do some offsetting and then they claim that they have done all the steps that they need to in order to be sustainable. We really want people and companies that are committed to the issues that are ahead of us, because if we continue on a path of just compensating, it's just not going to be enough, and we know what the statistics say.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely a good sign that a company like yours, which is doing something like this, is also like growing the market in this field, and that there is a demand for this product. That shows, or for this service, that shows that there is a willingness to change. And like, you look at the carbon footprint of a company, right? But from what I understand, it goes a little bit beyond that. Like the big holistic sustainability image of a company is kind of analyzed and improved. Can you kind of walk us through how that works? Like, do you go there and check out what their supply chains are? And
yeah, so we have a few steps to the process that we apply to every single company. One is that there's the basic data that essentially needs to be gathered. This is Scope 1, Scope 2, and partially Scope 3. This is essentially any travel, any electricity that is being used, facilities, fuel, data centers, and so on. That's kind of the main, and I would say that's the most basic thing that could be done. For the clients that have supply chains, what happens is that we develop proprietary calculators for them. And what this means is that this is a standalone product that then gets to be embedded into the software, so that you essentially are able to not only kind of see your emissions coming from your employees, but also from your full supply chain. For these proprietary calculators to be developed, we have essentially a scientific team that works for a part with the company. It's not a consulting setup, it's more like setting up the calculator itself, and then the company after that can just input number of units that they've purchased or sold and so on, and then the system would automatically translate this into emissions.
Okay, that's really interesting. So companies are coming to you for advice, and you help them. Is there anything that you think could be done on a kind of regulatory policy level to incentivize more companies to do so? What do we need to see there?
That's my favorite question. Not only that there's a lot that could be done, but what's really important to know is, first of all, that there's already a lot happening. So for the companies that think that they can wait and just hope that this is not going to be anything related to their own work, they should be aware that across Germany, Scandinavia, France, and now on the EU level, there's actually new policies that are going to be kicking in the next 1 to 2 years. So any company above 500 employees would need to report on a yearly basis. And not only for the superficial, I would say, calculations of just like, oh, this is how much we travel during this month and so on, something like that. This is how much electricity we use, but like going into the depth of Scope 3 as well, which is, for those of you that don't know, Anika, I'm sure you can define it yourself as well. Essentially, it's about suppliers and anyone that would be part of your supply chain. For banks, this would be their investments. For food manufacturers, this would be their packaging partners and so on. So the regulatory framework is kind of developing. I would obviously say that we need a bit more, in my opinion, first of all, granularity on the data level. We have learned quite quickly by working with so many companies is that it is possible to collect the data. It is possible to automate the process. Of course, not at 100% for some industries, but we should not shy away from being, I would say, quite meticulous with the calculations that we're making. At a second level, I think what another regulatory framework should be included is going beyond carbon footprinting. Sustainability is not just your emissions, and it's not only your CO2 emissions. There's a lot of other contributing factors to why you're not sustainable. For a food company, I'm just using this example, it's about their packaging, it's about the seasonality of the products that they produce, it's about the way they farm, the waste coming from water, And these things partially are calculated by Scope 3, but not fully. And companies should start thinking about the big picture, which is what we also offer to our clients as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I assume that, I mean, right now the market in which sustainable practices, renewable energy is operating, it's not really a fair system yet. Like, it's not really updated to today's reality. Right now, pollution is still to a very large extent extremely cheap or even free. And all of these externalities also relating to packaging and plastic pollution is also not really included in the price. So what is your perspective on CO2 prices and how it might kind of incentivize people to go more towards sustainable practices and get the support of your company? And, you know, what do you think of the current level-ish of where CO2 price development is going?
So CO2 pricing and taxing is kicking in Germany in January 2021. It's a good step. The price is not at the level where it should be, in my opinion. But I mean, that's of course always, there's always space for improvement. In terms of maybe the big picture perspective on what, how do I see this aspect? I think our society, and I don't even mean Europe, I mean like the whole world, like, we've learned to be really studious about frameworks that are being given to us. So remember the revolution when calories were being calculated on the packaging. This was something that was so mind-blowingly novel, and people were just quite, I would say, excited about this adventurous opportunity for them to see their food from a different perspective. I think we need these frameworks because they really kind of discipline us to start understanding the value behind certain things. If it's not about how much weight you might put on because you eat something that is not appropriate for your blood type, I don't know, whatever theories are out there about this, but like, there's definitely value in understanding what is the CO2. And I guess the calculations are the first step, and taxing is gonna, I would assume, automatically come in, because also the regulators are gonna quickly learn just by the data that is being provided to them how actually some products sneakily pass through the filters, but have an incredibly damaging effect on our planet. And I can give the simple example of like going into a supermarket and still being able to buy like a mango in the middle of winter that comes from a place that is totally opposite side of your continent even. There's also the aspect of like clothes being produced again on the other side. I'm not saying that we need to buy only from local producers, but like the type of materials, all these little things, I think it would be very supportive if there's some labeling. Carbon taxing definitely needs to be introduced across industries, and I applaud Germany that it's starting to consider revising these industries every 6 months, so that there's like a check in order to understand how basically the future looks without feeling satisfied just after, I guess, one introduction of a policy.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I like that parallel to calories as well, because it's so normal that on each product right now that is featured, maybe in like 10 or 20 years, that will be the standard for products and relating to carbon emissions. I really hope that it will be. And that's something that we definitely need some governmental intervention for, I would assume. Now, over the past years, from the governmental level back down to earth to the grassroots movements that we've seen over the past years, especially relating to, for instance, Friday for Future, it's become very clear that people can take a very prominent role in kind of mainstreaming the climate topic into everyday conversation and raising awareness. And I think it's really important that we keep that kind of momentum going and have more companies also explore these innovative business models like yours did. And I'm wondering, what kind of advice would you have for other startups in the energy transition who want to get started on something there, do something meaningful that also create work for people?
So recently we set up a community called the Green Tech Alliance, and this is now a community of more than 500 startups working in the green tech field. There's actually some of the speakers of today's event, like Christoph Berger from Ulisto, who is also one of our members. What we found out really quickly with regards to the startups, because every single startup that gets to join the community gets to be interviewed, they pass a scientific check, and also like impact check. So if they're trying to do greenwashing or they're basically newbies to the topic and have no clue what they're doing, they wouldn't be applicable to the community. What is the quick advice? Of course, I'm going to say join the community. This is definitely a place where you would find it's totally for free, and there's no strings attached. There's no like hidden terms and conditions. We're doing this because we really want to make sure that there's a place where you can showcase these innovations and make sure that these startups have the chance to get the funding that they need, the advice that they need. We have over 300 advisors that support these startups on a monthly basis. The second thing that is really important is stop making excuses. And this might sound a bit dramatic, but like I think we've been like cornered for such a long time as entrepreneurs that social impact was not appropriate entrepreneurship, that these were not topics that should be put together with normal startups. Even like the labeling of normal startups was being used at that time. And I think don't think that your startup is less than any other just because you're working on something that has a really big either altruistic or transitional goal that is related to how our society is shifting towards a more sustainable model. And when I say this, like be as proactive as you would be if you were working in investment banking or in any other industry that you might feel is like really at the realm and at the top of the mouth of many media. We still need to work a lot to be able to make ourselves more visible. These opportunities, like for example, today's event, fantastic, validation that we are doing something in the right direction, that not only the government, but also like really prominent institutions recognizing this and want to support younger companies. But believe in the fact that what you're doing is really what the world needs the most, because honestly, if it's not for our own conviction, we're not going to be able to like destroy all the walls that are still, unfortunately, against us on so many levels that I'm sure many can remind themselves even without me naming them.
Yeah, I agree. It's you need a lot of conviction and passion, I think, to keep pushing to try to break the status quo, because that's just always a challenging project, but meaningful and rewarding ultimately, I would also say. Yeah, then I have just also a question about the personal level. For those who are not yet ready to found their own startup, sometimes these issues of sustainability and climate change are quite overwhelming. How do you activate people to be kind of proactive, to try to make a little change in whatever way that they can? Do you have any advice for people?
Yeah. The Plan.A mantra has always been positivity and also education. These are the two things that activate people in a really meaningful manner. When you stop pointing fingers at people and just like when you stop shining in their face some statistics that totally are meaningless to their existence because you're not contextualizing them, you all of a sudden start seeing the human that is concerned for the health of our planet and for the health of humanity. I think that's the aspect of, positivity. The conviction of people should come from the fact that out of all the things that they can do, they can pick and choose the ones that are applicable to them, but not to focus on the fact that maybe they failed on the fact that they didn't stop eating meat or they didn't do this and that. Focus on the things that you can do and do it with like a lot of, I would say, commitment. And you're doing double the contribution if you just consider the things that you haven't done. The second aspect of education is incredibly important for Plan.A in particular. Plan.A has now existed for more than 3.5 years, and we have an academy with over 250 original pieces. This is essentially content that we or some of our partners like MIT, Yale University, and also like a few others like Imperial College have put together in order to explain to people what climate change actually is and to explain it in a manner that they can introduce some changes in their life and for companies to understand why is it important for them to take an action. We believe that an educated person is a lot more likely to do something. An educated company is a lot more likely to see how actually important they are to this whole transition. Hence why this second aspect of my recipe for success, I would say, for transitioning people positively to do something against climate change.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a very nice kind of call to action, and also something that I think won't scare people away so quickly. Sometimes these like big stories and the bad news out there can make you feel a little bit more passive, but there's a lot of empowerment potential in acting on climate change. We have 3 more minutes. I might squeeze in just one more question that I'm also curious about, because your company brings together all of these very different disciplines. You know, you've got like data analysis and financial analysis and all of these different also socioeconomic kind of aspects. How do you bring all of those very different disciplines together in this one common cause of like reducing carbon emissions and fighting climate change within a company? And do you have any suggestions on how one might go about navigating that?
It is really important to understand that the only way to address climate change is going to be through diverse set of solutions being applied simultaneously. In planning, we have equal respect for climate data science as to machine learning, as to economics, because we believe that this brings a different angle to a problem that is the same. Climate change, unfortunately, has had resounding effects on many different aspects of our existence, and all of these different disciplines bring to life our solution in the most comprehensive manner, so that when you as a company start using it, you end up in front of something that really captures the totality of the problem. It's not only about the CO2 emissions. We look at, for example, what is the unsustainable aspect with regards to your packaging and your sustainability purchases, purchases that are unsustainable or sustainable. We look also at the fact how people are being affected, and finally we look at the financial returns that you might get if you are sustainable. So we really understand that the world is a complex place, and it's complex because we've worked hard to explain it in many different ways. Now, because this is such a big issue, we need to bring these disciplines back together to essentially be really comprehensive with the approach we're applying to it. Tech is not going to solve the world issues. If someone claims that, it's going to be humans that actually work together with technology and other tools to be able to address all these challenges we have.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a nice way to frame it as well, that it's people in the end who will hopefully be making that change, with tech, of course, being used as a very, very powerful tool. Yeah, I find that a really wonderful thing about this. I mean, it's a very sad topic in the end, of course, climate change, but one of the joys that it brings is that you get to work with these people from all over the world who feel passionate about trying to fix it, and also with these different disciplines. It's always just great fun to sit together at a table with a lawyer and an engineer and a maritime spatial planner and a, I don't know, climate activist, and try to find some kind of common language, so to speak, even when you all speak English. So that's definitely very rewarding. So I guess, yeah, it's 11:30. I would invite you to maybe say one short, like, what would the audience take away? Some kind of call to action. What should we do to be more like you, like Plan.A, and make a difference in the world?
I would only say, first of all, to anyone that wants to get in touch, find me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to chat. Second of all, stay positive. We're not going to get through these challenges ahead of us without really true conviction and really clear picture on what needs to be done. Today, and this conference is the perfect format for someone to really become empowered on how they can act. So really excited to be part of this. Thank you, Anika, for taking the chance to chat to me. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to be able to speak with you.
Yeah, thank you, Lubomilla. It was really exciting to talk to you. I hope that we get to do this again at some point, maybe even in real life, and we can enjoy a glass of wine at the end and sessions.
Let's hope for that.
Yes, so I wish everybody else on the platform a very exciting rest of the day. And yes, I will leave you now for the next session. Bye, Lubomilla.